it in the chamber.
I think they'll take that note.
First words.
We're going to call together our work session of Wednesday, April 12th. The topic is the Heritage Tree Program update to the Natural Resource Committee. And we'll start with our Pete.
Hi. So at our last meeting, Francesca and Pam were here to present some of the very good work they've been doing to inventory trees that are potentially eligible for a Heritage Tree Program. And since then, there's been some further discussions with other department staff about how to support these efforts. And so without further ado, I'll just invite you guys up and we can start talking informally. Thank you. And your handouts are the packet that Francesca put together. You should have a copy of that.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first, they're just looking at the packet.
Okay.
The first thing I'd like to do is kind of apologize. I got a delightful call from Dee Dee yesterday. She wasn't sure if we were coming, and I realized that we probably could have been more communicative through this process, and maybe in hindsight, before we left last month, figured out a way of like getting a Google Doc or something where we could communicate. So I apologize if you're worried that we didn't keep in better communication.
It's fine.
So the first page is, I guess I also want to say that we've had so much fun and we've learned so much. And we've become deep. We've known each other for, since my kids were babies.
25 years.
And so I have really come to realize how absolutely ignorant I am from doing all this studying. And I just learned some important things from Pete before the meeting. And so we don't want to give you the impression that we are being pushy or having any personal agendas at all. We're just really excited that maybe our city can move forward and be a better tree steward. And however that happens is okay with us.
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's fine. Yeah.
Jesse, there's a packet right there that you can grab. So we just created this memo talking about the survey, which is the next page, asking some questions, reporting back to you about some of the research we've done, some of the interviews we've had and connections we've made. It's a big topic. It's way bigger than the two of us are really prepared to. And then finishing up with some suggestions. I think after talking to people like Brian French and April, I think it's really important to not only deal with try to enhance the Heritage Tree Program, but to step back and really do some planning and some including and put together a program that just really speaks to the livability and sustainability regarding trees and nature in our city. So the next page is our little cover letter.
I wonder if they could just take a minute to just read the memo.
Yeah, do you need that?
Because that kind of is comprehensive work.
Yes.
So the bottom of page 2 is what you're recommending, the steps to take?
This could include.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we really feel that you folks are probably far more able to do that kind of work. But after talking extensively with Brian French, who was so generous with his time, he just talked. He's working with the city of Milwaukee and River Grove. He's done lots of work with lots of cities, big and small, and he talked about how you really need to do things together. Put stuff together, your ordinance together with your tree, all the different ways you're going to deal with your tree canopy. And sent me to iTree, which has a 109-page book, which I've included the first 6 pages of back in this packet, that actually helps cities go through the process. And it's an amazing resource.
We wait until they are able to read all this.
So one of the things that staff has done in this regard already, at least in terms of getting the word out, was we put a Trail News article together. It'll be coming out in the next edition of Trail News to try to get people aware of the program. That's a very small step, but worthwhile. And you guys have had some conversations with Laura Turway and Phil Lewis, and they've agreed to allocate money for mailings at this point, so that the people that are identified on the inventory that you guys put together can get. We can put stuff in the mail and say, look, here's our program. Are you interested? You have a such and such species of tree, and it's been identified as a potential heritage tree. And here are the things that you could do in order to move the protection forward. So those are some concrete things that staff is committed to doing with our existing budget. In terms of additional incentives down the line, there's sky's the limit here, but it's going to take some collaboration and potentially some grant writing activity, not just by staff, but by the public and those that find it a priority. So as far as taking a step back, like you're talking about, and looking at our ordinances more comprehensively in terms of how are we going to protect mature trees throughout the city, that is a conversation that the Planning Commission and the City Commission have had and continue to have, and which staff are open to. So that dialogue can continue, and if the direction comes out, the next City Commission budget setting priority as a priority for staff, we'll do the work to change our ordinances, and with that comes budget impacts for staffing and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
But in that process, Pete, would you include people? I mean, how would you include people like who do that, who've done that kind of work, or see what other?
It depends. I mean, you can have.
It's supposed to be a green building.
It depends which department's going to do the work. If you're going to put it on the planning department, the planning department needs to have a budget for it. If you're going to put it on parks, if you're going to create a new position like a city forester, he needs some help. But it's usually we estimated 1.5 FTE to expand the tree ordinances to include regulatory protection of large trees, like you would see in Gresham or Lake Oswego through a permitting process. Right now, our permitting process is limited to commercial properties and street trees. So we send commercial properties through a minor site plan process if there's tree removal involved. And we do that now.
Is your mic on?
Pardon?
Is your mic on, or is my hearing
Oh,
down?
yep, my light's on.
Okay.
But I may be mumbling, sorry. Yeah, so right now, if you have a non-residential property, and you're proposing tree removal, we require a tree replacement and either a landscaper, architect report, or an arborist report. If you're removing a street tree, we have a permit for that. Yeah. We don't currently regulate tree removal on private residential property unless you're in an overlay district next to a stream or geologic hazard zone. Yeah.
Or wetland, just the geologic or wetland? Or
Well,
natural area?
the natural resource overlay district includes the wetlands and the streams.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you repeat that, Pete, on private property?
On private residential property, the city doesn't require a permit for tree removal unless you have a stream protection area or a steep slope. And that was a conscious decision a few years back not to move in that direction. But, mature trees, large trees, giving the benefits that they do compared to small trees, this becomes an issue of importance. Yeah. So.
Lost a lot of really big leaf maples the last
Right.
few years. I watched one go down, and then the next one was going down.
Yeah.
I do have a question to you. The tree removal, I guess, on a parking strip requires what to happen?
Oh, in a parking strip. So tree removal in a parking strip, requires evidence of a tree being dead, diseased, dying, or hazardous. And as a policy issue of several years ago, it was determined that a sidewalk lift due to a tree root constitutes a hazard and does not require an arborist report in order to remove that tree. And that was a decision made, with the knowledge of the Planning Commission and the City Commission, because it would have required that people who, of limited means, with such a widespread problem throughout the city of tree roots lifting sidewalks, where they were already paying thousands of dollars to replace a sidewalk panel, would not also incur the cost of having an arborist report when it was obvious that the tree root was the issue. So we allow that tree to be removed as long as it were replaced 1-for-1 with a 2-inch caliper tree. That's our current policy and code.
Is that any guidance on species? Or just-
Yeah, so
Okay.
2012, the NRC was instrumental in revising the street tree list to include more species for smaller planter strips. So we had 2.5 to 3 foot planter strips in a lot of older subdivisions. And then there's a hard pan underneath where the road base is, a very limited growing area. So you have to dig pretty hard to get a good spot for tree roots there.
I would like to interject that that is not exactly the kind of habitat that you're going to see heritage trees flourish in.
I agree.
And a tree ordinance that covers only trees in that strip is probably not very meaningful.
Right. So the
Because
current,
obviously the heritage trees are set
Right.
further back.
yeah,
They're less likely to raise sidewalks and so forth.
yeah, that's true. And they're on private property in most cases.
I'm
Yeah.
confused because, there are places where there are parking lots and really big, beautiful trees,
There's some-
but
yeah.
they have allowed space for the tree to exist without pulling up sidewalks or parking areas. And how does the ordinance deal with allowing a tree to get big enough around a parking lot?
Right. So currently, we have a 5.5 foot planter strip width minimum now. So if you build a new subdivision, the trees that are in the public right of way have more area than they did in 1993 to grow. So that's been widened. The right of way width, minimum right of way width for the road standard has been widened to accommodate that as well. Parking lot trees, that's going to be a non-residential property, so those are regulated as part of a formal landscaping plan. Some cities have, I think, either Tigard has a new ordinance that's based on soil volume requirements. I'm not sure how well it's functioning. It was passed 2 years ago, but all of the planting is dictated by how much soil volume there is. So that drives the species selection. Yeah.
Coming back to the street trees, a person can remove it without a permit, but do they have to?
No, they have to have a permit.
The permit, but they have to replace a tree?
Yes, absolutely.
What if somebody removes it? What kind of teeth is it? I have a neighbor who cut down, they hit 3 in front of the house and one disappeared about a year ago.
Yeah, well, there's usually there's a weekly list of code enforcement issues, and then we follow them up on as
Right.
case by case basis.
But you would not necessarily know the trees were removed unless somebody told you.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. So it comes through the Go Request website. We have an app for code enforcement, and one of the selections is tree removal. So somebody can put it on their smartphone and say, trees removed here, and code enforcement goes out, gives them a friendly letter, which comes from our department, and then that gives them 30 days to contact us voluntarily, and if they don't contact us within 30 days, then they get a notice of violation, and they have to deal with the issue. That's the way we do it.
The problem
Yeah.
is that
Mhm.
the sidewalk got messed up because the sewer was messed up, because there was an elderly
Yeah.
lady that lived in the house.
Yeah.
And when they fixed everything up, the city or the county, whoever did it, planted 3 really nice maples, but they're bushes. And they need to go in there and cut all the bottom branch. Every time I walk by in the morning, I go, some of these need to be pruned. But they got tired of the bush in the middle and just cut it down because it just disappeared.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
I wish we could have Brian French here because I would love to hear his responses to these discussions of dealing with how the ordinance manifests itself in real life. And because I don't know if you read, he feels that our ordinance is weak.
I did read that.
what is weak? It's almost non-existent, basically.
When I first got involved with this, I thought, Oregon City, Pete, you were instrumental in getting this to become a Tree City USA, right? I mean, that's a big deal. And then to keep it going as a Tree City USA. So, and then we have a tree ordinance. So this one article kind of outlines, that's in your packet, about the Bend would benefit from Tree City designation.
And a tree board.
And a tree board. Well, it's like putting all these little puzzle pieces together. You've got Tree City USA, then you've got a board that isn't a governing agency, but it's a
Advisory.
like advisory board. And so as an advisory board capacity, they could suggest educated advice for the city to manage its urban canopy. And an example of that, they could be a mediator also. And a good example of that was just last year when those trees were all cut down by Barclay School on 12th and Jefferson. That the board could have stepped in, as tree stewards and make recommendations, for example.
Before the trees were cut or...
Yeah, or...
Okay.
And it seems like the Heritage Tree program would be under the auspices of a tree board. I mean, if you look at all the puzzle pieces on this. And the reason we thought the Heritage Tree program was a good place to start is because it creates a deeper sense of place, and it gets people involved. And you can read lots of articles that Heritage Tree programs strengthen civic pride and just develop a community mentality of building. And
I think it's fun to walk through Portland and see the plaques on the trees.
And one of the questions on our questionnaire is, we've had responses from people saying, I don't want any recognition of my tree. I don't want the public involved with my tree. And then you have other people that say, oh, we love our tree, and they want to tell you a story about it. And so you get the gamut. But one of the issues also that this article covered was the consequences of not keeping our urban canopies. We're losing like I think it was, he said how many a year,
In the United States?
yeah, that we're losing from
Seven-
development?
No, it's
17 million. Oh, no, that was the
ash trees.
pest. And he cited this emerald ash borer outbreak decimated the urban forest over 25 states, and it was estimated by USDA that it cost $10.7 billion. So there's incentives to keep our urban canopies.
And they're worried about that getting out here too.
I am too in urban logging, quite frankly.
But and that's where Francesca and I thought, well, if we gathered all this information and came to your committee, Natural Resource Committee, we didn't understand how the process works. Like, would you advocate to the City Commission or the Planning Commission, or would you be the board, the tree board?
We
Or
are.
even create a study group. I don't know.
Aren't we the tree board?
Yeah,
don't
Pete- Pete says you're the tree
We are
board.
the tree sub-
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if there were designated trees on city property, we would be the ones that would have to bring the recommendation to the planning commission, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Or something
city
like that.
property or private.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like I was just reading the one on the city property one. Like to me, that feels like if you wanted to start kicking something off, there's got to be at least one tree somewhere on city property that you could designate. And
There are, it's our schools. We have a whole bunch of them in our schools.
Well, that's not city property, though. That's school property.
But it's public, and then
Well,
we
but-
have some type of influence. And then look at all the, we have a lot of big, beautiful, giant trees along our streets.
It'd just be easier to start on city property.
Yes.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, if you
And it better
wanted
be
to kick
tight.
something off and show that hey, this is how the program might work, that might be a way to jumpstart it.
Well, there are trees on our inventory that are there, and then the national property too, of course.
Yeah, because I think on the city property, all it required was a nomination, and then it had to get kicked up to our recommendation, and then
Your recommendation, and
Yeah.
then city commission
City
makes
commission.
a decision. Yeah, and we actually have two
Okay.
in the hopper.
Oh, okay.
So for the pools.
Great.
Thank you,
What
Dee
do
Dee.
you think of the survey?
I think you guys did a great job.
Yeah.
That was a lot of work, a lot of walking up and down the streets, and I get
No,
it.
not the inventory. I mean the
There's survey in
actual
here.
He's got a
survey.
survey.
Oh, yeah, I actually
I did have the question I had, you make a reference to the letter, a letter. You know about the heritage trees before you
Oh,
wrote
we
the letter.
want to
So you're gonna include the letter with the
We're
survey.
gonna include another piece of paper that has the description of the Heritage Tree Program on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you guys will be giving that to staff, and we'll be working with you on the final product, and then that goes into a mailing.
What do you think about? I mean, I've really pondered about this because what do you think it matters who it comes from? Who
Oh,
does it, or does it have to come from the city? Could it come from us and then we could bring it back to you, or what do
I don't-
you think about that?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
bringing back what to us?
Well, I mean, right now we have fashioned it as if she and I were sending it out, saying we got this. We're working with city staff. We're working with elected leaders. We're working with other volunteers, and we felt, we need to find out what you think, what you know,
Yeah.
and then come back. But it could come from Pete too, or the NRC. But I'm curious about your thoughts about that.
I wonder how the public would react, whether they would react differently. I'm guessing people would, whether it came from the
Yes,
government or came
yes.
from
I
neighbors.
think that's what you're
Well, there was
asking.
a survey that was done on the next door on Metro, and the question was, how much do you know about Metro? And that started a tremendous amount of dialogue, both good and bad, and a lot of people. And then there were a few knowledgeable people answering back, which was, and I followed that for considerable length of time, thinking it's what we need for a heritage tree program. I would
Well,
also
I mean,
go
I just think-
electronically and get it. but-
What would you think if you got what would you think if you got something in the mail from your neighbors like this?
I would fill it out, but I'm one of the few. I would fill it out just because this is passionate to me, but I would be one of the
Would you
few.
be more inclined to respond because it's your neighbors writing to you, or this, or does it matter with about the
Text.
city? Text?
If you could have it.
Oh yeah, right.
Right.
I'm just curious.
Do a survey monkey so I don't have to write. I can
Yes.
just click
Yeah, I was
buttons.
gonna say if you consider like an online survey as well, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, we don't know how to reach these people, specific people.
Oh,
Is
with
this
Survey
going
Monkey.
to property owners or
Yeah, some of them
addresses?
don't live here.
Okay.
So we have the addresses of the property owners.
Okay.
At
Because I was saying, if a renter got that, they go, I don't care about it.
No.
Well, you'll get.
Most of them do live in their
And
homes.
I think it's part of it is a question of financing. If the city's going to pony up the money to do it, my feeling is the city's going to want to send it out.
Yeah.
But if there was a granting opportunity, like Rex, maybe the Metro Enhancement Grant or something, you could actually apply for the funds.
Well, I just did the quick math on how much it would cost us for a stamp to send it and a stamp to put on the return envelope. And because some of these residents, it's not really actually 119 different. Some of these houses have more than one tree on their property. So, I mean, it's just not that much money. So Pam and I decided we would be willing to pay for it ourselves. She's rich.
No, I have a drawer full of forever stamps.
I've been looking at this from different angles too, and spoke to Rodney Walters up at the Clackamas Community College because we have the arboriculture coming in, and I'm trying to see if we can finagle the graduating classes to volunteer with that teacher to go on and look and see if they might evaluate some of the trees that are on the list that need to be done.
That would definitely have to be done to qualify for the Heritage Tree Program.
And I know he was also friends with Brian French and was very interested. We might be able to get their expertise and
Well, the
Guidance,
purpose,
some of this stuff.
Dee Dee, though, is to find out what people think. That's a separate thing of actually getting them onto the heritage tree.
no, yeah, I get
I think
it.
those are two different topics.
If I could make a slight suggestion about
Yes.
the survey, since not everybody's going to live on their property, you might want to put a question on here about, do you live on the property? Because you might get very different
Or do you
responses
plan
from,
also?
from property owners,
Right.
people who live there versus people who don't live there.
Oh, that's
Yep.
really
We've-
easy because the address will just tell us right away. But
Is this going to be anonymous?
anonymous.
Meaning,
Well,
there's no name on it. You
No,
put-
because on the survey it
Oh, I
just
see.
says
They're
your
putting-
tree is at this address. So
Okay.
we're thinking when if stuff comes back to us, we can immediately go
There may be
in.
people who don't answer it because it's not anonymous.
Yeah. Except that
There are people
think
who
we
don't
have-
want anybody to know
Yes,
anything about
yes.
anything.
yes,
what
yeah.
I was
But you know what? Most of the people who have these big trees, I don't think that's really a big problem.
That's why they still have the big trees.
Yeah.
How many
Except for my friend.
surveys would you send out?
119?
Close.
Oh,
Someone over
119?
100. Someone over 100. It's not that many.
No,
I mean, if we got 50 back, it would be terrific.
you won't get 50 back.
Not if you send 100. You're not going to get 50 back.
You'll
Even in
get
our own neighborhood?
10.
I was gonna
Very
say
good.
maybe
20.
10 to 20.
If you
yeah.
get 25,
But
you're
who's to
doing good.
say? Don't know unless you do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you said.
I'd had a party and surprisingly enough, everyone showed. No one
I just did a
replied, no one
survey
RSVP'd,
in
but-
McMinnville.
Did you?
Yeah, it was from our department at college, the Environmental Science Department, and it was from the Greater Yamhill Watershed Council and the Yamhill Soil and Water Conservation District. And I think people paid more attention to it because it wasn't just coming from a class at the school. But we didn't get that great of a.
The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council sent out a survey to residents along Abernathy Creek. We were looking to be able to do a survey on the property, and we only got 6 responses out of something like 160 was sent out.
Well, since it's only our neighborhood,
Well,
should
it
we
may
wait
be.
till the good long evenings
No,
of
that's-
light and just go door to
No,
door?
and that's, I mean, that's.
That would be you'd get a better response.
Yes,
yeah, I think it would too.
yes. I mean,
Yeah.
that's had crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It saves you mainly cost per
I mean,
house.
we've already been to all these houses and talked to several wonderful little old ladies and all kinds of people that told us stories, so they're going to recognize us.
I used to work for the Game and Fish, and we tried everything to get people to return surveys, and finally had to make it just a requirement
It's
of
tough.
law.
Yeah.
Return it or you get a ticket.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I think the answer is, yeah, I think if you were willing to do it, it'd probably be better than coming from the city.
I think so
Yeah,
too.
I
Yeah.
think so too.
The city sends us utility
Yeah, I
bills,
mean-
the city sends us.
I know it. I know.
By the end of the process, you have to be upfront with people and say, this does mean that you will record a protective covenant that runs with the land for perpetuity of the tree. And so, that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of the legal
That's
protection.
why we ask these questions in the survey.
Right. So, that's a concern for people who want to develop their property in the future, is whether or not that tree would be an impediment to that.
Yes, absolutely. I think we have a
yeah.
question about that.
We do.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. Good. And then the plaque that we provide is a city. We provide that. And then, so
Well,
Put
maybe
the letterhead on it.
we should just plan
Go
on
door.
walking. Yeah, we've done it. I mean,
That would be, and we know where to go.
You know what else might be just,
except
Help.
for the rentals. Yeah.
there's, and Rodney Walters could help us with this, and that is, there's a calculation how to value your tree.
That's on the
By
eye
size,
trees.
height, and
Yeah.
everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It might just say, do you know what your tree is worth? And give somebody their calculation so they can know what their tree is really worth. A lot of
That's
people
a good
don't say
point.
my tree is worth $15,000 being in my front yard.
So
And-
the tree's worth to the
To the land,
community.
to humanity is,
Yeah.
but most people want to know what's my worth.
Well, we put
And
the
that's-
first
and on the
question
average,
in.
you know,
We
and-
put
and-
when you purchased your property, was this tree a positive factor in making your decision?
Yeah, I'm just
That's
saying is
kind
that
of
there's
searching
ways
for-
sometimes that you
fishing
can
for the
just put
value.
a
Question.
value on the tree, saying, do you know what that tree is worth? Do you have any idea that wonderful 200-year-old tree, because there's calculations on how to value your tree too. And I wrote that in one of my letters.
So,
Do you want to, I
yeah.
got a hold of you a couple of months ago after the ERC conference.
I agree.
And there was that group, and I think it was Tuality Hills was doing a thing where they were taking mostly Hispanics and Muslims, young people who were unemployed, and they were training them for horticultural certification
Right.
and arbor type stuff and tree services and then they would provide these internships where they would go around and in one case I believe it was Cornelius hired several of these young people to come and do a street tree inventory for the city, and I sent that stuff to Pete because that seemed
Wonderful.
like a real win-win situation
Yes.
for Oregon City where
Yes.
maybe we can combine that program with our needs.
And that sounds like something right along the line of a neighborhood stewardship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neighborhood
I like
tree
that.
stewardship program.
Because they were teaching them, how to recognize the
That's
species and
stewardship.
diseases and
Yes.
the health of the tree.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And did
Good
I
idea.
mention to this group that I think I learned it since we were here? We learned it that Phil Lewis was one of the first people to graduate from the Portland neighborhood tree stewardship program. And I'm thinking of doing it. You're thinking of doing
I'm
it.
going to take a class from
And-
Portland.
Yeah, well,
that
it's
sets
a
up
program.
free.
It takes a long time to get through it, and you have to really study this NTS certification. But Phil has it.
cool.
Yeah. So, timeline wise, do you have another meeting before
Yeah.
summer? And do you
Oh,
meet
before
in the
the summer?
summertime?
Yeah, we meet in the summertime. We meet every month.
Oh, you meet every month.
Yes.
So what if you think this survey is okay, if in the next month, we get to as many homes as we can in the evenings, and we come back to you with what we found, and we start a different survey that we can actually take to concerts in the park or the farmers market, and just survey people who live here and talk about trees and see what they find out. And
That'd be interesting too.
and then we can also talk about the Heritage Tree Program and get some ideas of people who would like their trees on it and what they think of the Heritage Tree Program. Does that make sense?
Your letter, your letter. I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, as people see this information they're going to have, would consenting to a tree designation along with signing a protective covenant be of value to you?
Yeah.
As long as it's understood that signing the consenting to it, in fact, you do sign the covenant. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
But I think will your letter also indicate that this protects the tree in terms of a covenant, in terms of future owners of the property? Would that be clear in the letter?
Yes, I sent this to Brian last night for his feedback, and he hasn't had time to get back to me. So, I don't consider this survey a finished product. And also, I promised, we promised Dan Miller with the RTCA program. He does lots and lots and lots of surveys for different reasons, National Park Service. And he would like to look at it too and help us hone it down. But I think that can happen in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. I mean, the benefit of going out, say, to 100 people or so, to taking this out and so forth, is you will perhaps find where probably maybe some people can talk to you with where they had some problems with the survey.
Yes.
I don't think you need our approval at all to do this, but I think you would have our support in going ahead and pursuing.
Yes.
Because I think we'd all be interested in seeing what the outcome of this would be. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And this is your trial run, essentially,
Yes.
both in terms of the nature of the questionnaire
Yes.
and how receptive people are. And so
Yes. So maybe what we should do is not go out this next month, but wait to hear from Brian and Dan, and then come back to you in May with the product that we think we'd like to take out, and then start after seeing you next month. 'Cause
Well, and my
that
guess
makes
is
sense.
if you're going to go meet people, you'll probably have a more amicable discussions when the weather's a little bit nicer and lighter.
This year.
Oh, the weather.
And then also, we will have something for you next month, that a draft that we can talk about for just being at the farmers market and going to the concerts in the park or whatever. You may have suggestions about what we can do, and because we're good, cheerful people. We are passionate about this, and so we're good ambassadors. So part of the survey process is also building the community building and getting people thinking about it and maybe excited about making our city more organized about how we're going to protect our trees and enhance our tree canopy. I mean, I don't even know, Phil, Pete, do you know what percentage of our city is covered in tree canopy?
The last time Audubon did a regional study, I would say it was 2010. Thank you. 26% for Oregon City.
It needs to be about 40.
Or Lake Oswego is 40. I mean, considering about 25% of your urban infrastructure is taken up by impervious surfaces and roads and parking lots anyway, so those are areas you can't plant.
You
So
should have had this 40 years ago.
I'd like
Portland
to,
did. I got a book for you, Stumptown to Tree Town.
I'd like to point something out about canopy.
mhm.
I wish there was an aerial photo of the city on the wall here somewhere, but there's not. I noticed that there is almost pretty good connectivity of thick canopy between Waterboard Park and Upper Newell Creek, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, like a corridor.
Yeah, and that is really important to promote, protect, and restore. if we can find other places like that. Because the city is, you look at that aerial map, it's
That-
pretty bare.
That's a good point. And that
But
was,
the connectivity of these various interurban forested areas is really super important to wildlife.
that was one of the factors why when we did the Friends of Trees program, we concentrated in those neighborhoods between Waterboard Park and Newell Creek initially. You know.
Excellent.
Because you could see that there was a potential ribbon of canopy that you could preserve or enhance in that area.
That's pretty obvious on an aerial.
On an aerial for sure, but it needs to be done and moving forward as well. So,
Did I tell you, Mr. Clark, that I live at 2nd and High, and last summer there was a covey of quail in my backyard.
Really?
And I have an old stone post on the property line that I think tells that back in 1920 where the line is. And the male was sitting up on that while the females and all the babies. But to get to my backyard, they had to cross major busy streets.
Yeah, they do it. I haven't seen any around here. Eastern Oregon, they're
something.
pretty common.
Yeah, I had never seen it.
That's
I used
amazing.
to grow up with
Yeah.
one of those.
When was this?
Changed
That last summer.
Fantastic.
So, yes, the connection part of it is, because I waste city water, I turn the sprinkler on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. For the birds.
Okay.
Anyway, one of the things I wanted to ask you too is if you'd like to have Brian French come and talk to you.
I think that'd be okay, but let's go this process on the questionnaire first, so we can
Okay.
have a feeling
Okay.
of what's going to happen.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Brian and Dan in the next 2 weeks.
Dan, what's Dan's last name?
Miller.
Okay.
He's going to be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Ladderette Park. We're going to be discussing their Ladderette Park renovation project. Phil Lewis will be there, and I don't know who else. We'll come back to you in May
Working a little ladderette with
with what we think might be a finished product and another draft of, and we should probably start on that so they can see that too, and a draft for just a general population survey about trees. And then at the end, last 2 weeks of May and into June, we will survey, and July we will see you with the results.
Do you want to draft another questionnaire for general purposes before you look at the results of this one?
Well, that's, what do you think about that?
Well, I
It would
thought I
have
kind
a
of looked at
different
this
nature.
as a trial run in terms of how the responses would be and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why you would want to jump into drafting another letter before you find out which responses on this one.
Well, because we would have more space if we weren't dealing with the Heritage Tree Program to ask questions also about other things, just general, like, did you know the NRC was also the tree board? I didn't.
And if you're going to go electronic, I think that you could get a link so someone could calculate the value
Yes.
of their tree. If you put
Oh.
money in front of it, you know, I mean, and that right off the bat, like, do you know the value of your tree? And you find out it's worth, $15,000 or $20,000. Then all of a sudden, these questions mean a little bit different.
Is that the value if you log it?
Well, if you
As I
lie,
said,
it's a little
the
bit
que-
different.
Objective.
Yeah, that's the point. When
Yeah.
you say value of a tree, that's going to mean very different things to many people.
Right.
And so,
Yes.
Well, I meant, yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
you have this-
they're worth way more visually. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
No, I agree, but I was saying that
On
whole
your
the
property.
value thing is very subjective.
yeah,
You
it's a
could-
subjective
you could
thing.
have
That's the only point I was trying to make.
15 different definitions of
Correct.
value.
Mine is why would you keep it on your property?
No, I agree.
So,
Or,
But-
or
but I mean,
take it
now
off
you
for
say you have to
review.
lean it.
You say somebody's tree's worth
Very
15
true.
grand, they're gonna be like, cut it down.
yeah, but very true. But if you go to a forestry, that same walnut tree might be only worth $250.
That's
So-
right.
exactly.
So I think that's the problem with using the term value.
Yeah,
And-
All right.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, Dee Dee, where does that? What purpose does that serve? I'm not sure that it doesn't really have.
Well, if there's a
Real estate
value
value.
on a real
Yeah,
estate
real estate value.
evaluation.
Yes, right.
Yes, I think the most important thing, though, is being able to show our resident citizenry that these trees together create not just monetary value, but
No, I truly
all
agree.
the other things too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's-
Lake Oswego's 3
yeah.
degrees cooler than we are for,
Yeah.
for a reason. You know, I mean, those
Oh,
kind of
well,
things.
that's, we don't all
In
think
the summer.
that's good.
In the summer.
Yeah.
You want to emphasize in the summer.
It's the intrinsic
Get me
value.
back on
that-
track.
Dee Dee, just to make sure I know, when you're talking about the value of the trees, you're talking about the
Value to your property as a whole. Your estimate, if you were to sell your home, that tree was not on there.
Well, because
you would
they're-
lose, because just landscaping is 15% of your property.
Mm-hmm,
Trees add that additional to each one. And then if it comes with a story,
And well, and there's a scientific, an arborist way of calculating the value where they measure a certain height,
Correct.
depth. Was that what you meant also?
yeah, but as a real estate value
So
to
a
your
real
property,
estate
not
value
as,
and
not
then-
as a harvesting.
She's not talking
Yeah.
about taking it to the mill and making
No,
two
no,
by
I'm
fours.
trying to say why would you want to keep your piece of, why would you want to keep that tree
Yeah.
next to your house or where that possible
Yeah.
addition would be or whatever.
I think something that would help would be to show people what some of these trees are.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I-
know, it's not real well known that you have to get out and drive around the neighborhoods and stuff, and there's some unbelievable trees,
Oh,
but
there
nobody
are.
knows it.
Yeah.
You could actually put together a driving tour,
Well,
or a
that's-
walking tour, or both.
Yes.
That's one of the
And we
questions
brought
on
you
the survey.
that
Would you?
Because that's around.
Yeah.
One of the
You know-
questions
We have
is,
a
would you
Well,
be
Uh,
number 7?
If you join the Heritage Tree Program, would you allow having your tree on a list as part of a future walking tour? Some trees are a lot of work, and then they get rotten or they get, I just had to cut down an apple tree that was really, really old on my place, but it was so rotten and it was just slowly. But I've planted 5 other trees before I cut that tree down, so.
So you mitigated.
We have the person wants to make a comment
Yes.
on this, and so you'll be coming back. You're going to run the
Yes,
survey and
yes.
see how it goes.
Would you, do you have some general feedback about what you see here?
You have two different surveys here, really.
Mm-hmm.
One's a general one, and one is the heritage piece, and that's fine. But I don't know where your priorities are on that.
You don't know where our priorities are.
Yeah, are your priorities to try to get the heritage tree information out there, or the more general questionnaire you have on the back?
Both.
Okay.
But our larger priority, Doug, is to see if we can't stimulate a greater commitment
Okay.
on the part of our city leadership and citizenry to really think about and provide for increasing our tree canopy and increasing our stewardship of our trees. Not just with city staff and a possible separate tree board and an urban forester, but with curriculum and strategies to get people involved and, a complete program.
For when I was looking at the back sheet here, do you think Oregon City would benefit from a neighborhood tree stewardship program? Is that described in your letter? Are people going to know what that is?
That's on our survey?
That's on your in general questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
yes. And didn't we make a little, didn't I put a little, yes, that's why I put that they can actually Google the site and look at it if they were interested in learning
But that's the
about it.
next question.
That's the next question. It's out of
So
order.
you might want to flip those
That's out of
Flip
order.
it,
questions.
yeah, that's a good idea to flip it. Yeah, thank you.
I am looking through it. I think you'll find your result or what you're looking for once you start doing the the survey, and,
Yeah.
and even if you do a house to house walking survey, you'll find out even more information because you'll have that dialogue with those people.
And that's why I'm suggesting don't do the other survey you're talking about. Draft that out before you get the results of this one.
Yeah.
You'll have probably a far better idea in doing
Okay,
that.
yes,
And that's,
fine.
yeah.
So we could, but we can still come back with,
Well, yes.
yes.
Oh, for sure.
And then we
We're-
can hone it
Yeah.
after we get the results from what.
Yeah.
And then we'll be talking
Absolutely.
to
And then we could have the
Brian.
end of summer to do the concerts in the park and the farmers markets, and we could maybe be finished by September.
Don't forget the movies in the park, too.
Oh, that's right. But it's dark.
And then we also have,
Yes, but
And we also have-
people get there while it's light, and you can speak to them
Yes,
before the
that's-
movie
that's
starts.
you have the neighborhood night out
Yes.
that's coming up, and
Yes.
you have First City
Oh, there's a
Celebration
lot.
downtown.
The
So-
And
antique.
there's the antique fair that,
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of opportunities. Well, thank you very much. Now, we've got actually somebody that wants to speak to this, and so I'm going to go ahead and let you make room for him.
I'm happy to scoot over.
here, I'll scoot over.
Now, is that Cyrus Pacini, is that right?
That's it, you got it.
Okay.
I'll try to keep this down to 3 minutes if I can. It might go over. My name is Cyrus Pacini. I live in the Park Place neighborhood of Oregon City, and I'm going to tell a quick little story. I purchased my home in the summer of 2015, and I met the realtor, drove up Forsyth Road, so it's really at the northern edge of the city, and was immediately greeted at the driveway by 3 60, 70, 80-foot Douglas fir trees right next to the house, and immediately fell in love. And didn't scare me one bit. I didn't
That's
mind.
value.
And I continued up, and I had my 18-month-old son at the time with me, and he jumped out of the car, ran to the backyard, and it had been cleared at some point, so it was a big expanse of lawn, but surrounded by tall trees of all kinds. And the first thing the realtor said was, well, don't fall in love with that giant oak tree that you see there. They're going to be building a house here. And that's fine. I moved from a very dense neighborhood, and I was moving to a half-acre, quarter-acre, that was the general acreage around me. So I was okay with any houses that were going to be put up. So it was quite a surprise Christmas Eve morning to wake up to the sound of chainsaws, and kind of freaked out a little bit, and I didn't think the tree was going to go that soon. So I immediately called the city and left a pretty worded early morning, very tired message, and was shocked when an hour later, I think it was Pete who actually called me back. And he said, well, let me tell you, yes, there is in fact a house that's going to be built there. They filed for their permit and all is going through. And I said, well, let me tell you what I'm worried about. This tree's at least 300 years old. And that's just as an amateur, just looking at the size of the thing. And it's what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure it's an Oregon white. It's gigantic. They kept it. They did not tear the tree down. They did cut down maybe 4 other trees on the property. But it stayed. And I don't know, I assume it was just, that was the plan all along. So I don't think I had anything to do with that. Well, then the house didn't sell. It went up, I think, in May, and it went all through the summer, didn't sell. And this is when properties were selling all around me. And the builder came to me and he said, it's the tree. People are scared of it. Most of his buyers were actually, a lot of them were Californians, that they saw this giant tree hovering over this house because it's on a slope, and they weren't looking to buy it. Well, it sold about 2 weeks ago to a couple from Malala, I believe, who came from a tree-loving area, I guess. And he said the tree was one of the main factors of him purchasing the home. So I don't know what that says necessarily. How long does one wait before you tear a tree down? So that's that story, completely separate from actually what I came here originally to talk about, which is the acre that's for sale next to me, owned by a bank that has a pre-approval for a subdivision of 4 lots. currently is just sitting there with lots of brambles running around it. And in 2003, the home was demoed as a fire training, and the house is still there, like the base structure and all that. A lot of trees have grown up since, and I'm pretty sure just from chasing my cat through the property, looking around, there's at least 4 or 5, they'd have to be now 10, 11 years old. I believe white oaks. They're growing in the middle of the property, and they're kind of surrounded. There's no trails. I think they're getting missed in any sort of inventory that's been happening, because I do check on all that and see what, they're small. And I know that trees have to be a certain diameter before they're considered for heritage status or any other kind of thing like that. I would just hate to see this property, be developed haphazardly, and all these young trees that, if they got to start somewhere if they're going to eventually be 300 years old. So anyways, that's really all I have to say. And I would love to send Pete more information later about the, I have the tax lot number and all of that stuff, and photos of the trees even.
How tall are they?
They're only, maybe the tallest one I've seen is 14 feet, 15 feet tall. But the girth of their trunk is what has struck me at first, because there's other scrub oak on the property. And you can tell the difference when you see one that is just like a straight, thick trunk that branches out into a perfect ball. And they're beautiful. And they're just still really small right now. So anyway, that's
one
really
of the,
all
that's one of the great. I think oak is a pretty slow growing tree.
It's very slow growing.
And so,
Well, Ted can
I
answer
also-
that, but one of your observations that's interesting to me is I believe it's the saplings that are oak reproduction is way down, and there is very little oak reproduction. So
scour my
your
yard,
observation
right?
that it might be important is pretty good, pretty significant.
And now I'm excited about the process of the heritage tree. I didn't even know about that until coming now. So I'm thinking about these giant fir trees in front of my house, which actually block my view of I-205, and in a way sort of block the roof line of all the new housing going up behind me from I-205. So, that's,
make your application.
Yeah, I will.
I have a blank application here for you
Right?
to take
I
home.
love it.
Pete,
Yeah.
at what size does the mitigation requirements of developments kick in?
So 6-inch diameter, breast height. Those are the trees that you have to show on a plan. And anything less than 6 inches.
Pete could tell you better than I. If it's in the building envelope, then I think it's 1 tree mitigation, and if it's outside the building,
And if it's outside a building
It's
envelope,
3?
it's based on the diameter of the tree. So the maximum number of trees required, once you get over a certain size, is 15 for a really big tree. If you remove a really big one, you have to. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what this means, but 4.4% of the acreage is already in the NROD.
In Natural
So-
Resource Overlay District. Okay. Yeah.
some thought might be given to something that he's bringing up, because
Yeah, really.
he's talking about them potentially being oaks, and you're right. I mean, people when they plant a tree probably want a tree that's going to grow fairly fast, and an oak may not be one of them.
I'd like to see the property developed.
but-
I'd just
I'm
like
not
to
sure
see the
that's
house
true that with
with
white
the tree
oak.
on it.
Well, that's an excellent segue into Ted Labby's
Yeah,
presentation.
Yeah.
but I'm coming to my point. There are certain trees that we're interested in
Preserve.
having a mitigation to a given species. Is there a way that we could actually talk about that in terms of the code?
Right. Currently, there's no requirement to replace a particular species with a particular species. No.
That's
And-
bad.
and when-
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's for some. I mean, in some cases, it may not be so important, but for certain species, I think.
Western red cedar,
Yeah. So
Oregon white oak. There should be a many.
yeah, so that's something we might want to get a consideration in terms
Yeah.
of
Big leaf
code.
maple, not so much.
Yeah, that's right. It depends on the species, right?
So that would be an amendment to Chapter 1741.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
thank you.
Ted, just been patient.
So, we start our regular meeting, Doug, and
Yes.
Okay. One second. We got to move through a couple of items before the presentation, but they're short. Don't worry.
You ready? Calling the regular meeting of Wednesday, April 12th together, and I am going to actually have a request for a roll call so people coming forward will know who we are.
Okay. All right. Jerry Herman.
May I state, Jerry Herman should be regarded as excused. There's some big issues associated with the co-development, and he's down there at that particular site.
All right. Bill Clark.
Present.
Dee Dee Dalsrud.
Present.
Dorothy. Doug Neely.
Accounted for?
Trent Warmus. Nancy Broshot.
Here.
Matt Cool.
Present.
And Pete Walter, staff.
And is it Lab or Levy?
Levy.
Ted Levy, please come on up and
Okay.
talk to us about the
Let me
mapping.
put the screen down here, Ted,
Yeah.
and get
You know, I might switch the order of what if that's okay.
Oh, that's
Give
fine.
you a chance to fire it up.
Yeah.
You know, because I actually want to tonight to talk about really two things. So, hi again. My name is Ted Labby. I was here about a year and a half ago, fall of 2015, to
Right.
really, for those of you that remember, to promote this Oak Naturescape series that I was helping run in North Clackamas County with Mark Wilson. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the end of that here at in the talk. And I'm also going to tell you about the oak mapping work that we've been doing under the Oak Quest, kind of, and where we are with the region. I kind of want to, again, I give you an update of where we're at. But before I do that, I kind of want to switch hats. I'm in the process of switching hats. I worked for the tribes in Washington State for many years, and then I worked for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And then I started consulting as a just independent consultant 5 years ago, and I've done a lot of work with Metro and whatnot. But I'm actually going to be kind of downsizing my consulting business in the beginning of the summer and putting on a new hat, helping a fellow by the name of Mike Hauk with the Urban Green Spaces Institute. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
Mike is going to be sort of transitioning to retirement, and I'm going to be stepping in and helping him run the organization, probably doing a lot more project-based work like Oak Quest, for example, that is also relevant to natural resources policy in the region. And so I came tonight to talk about Oak Quest and collaborative stewardship of Oregon White Oak, but the other reason I came tonight was to talk about a new project idea that I kind of wanted to pitch to you. It's very relevant to what you just got done talking about with regards to urban forestry. So I'm very excited that there was just a natural coincidence. So maybe I'll start there. So thank you, Francesca and Pam. That was wonderful. And just want to say that, a couple things. I want to talk to you afterwards. I've got a bunch of ideas that I was scrawling out. But just generally about this idea, which I wanted to present to you, I am in the process of sort of brainstorming and talking with various people about the idea of a regional urban forestry initiative. And so what does that mean? What is that? Okay. Well, about 5 years ago, my brother, Jim Labby, with some money from Metro, got some money to do kind of an assessment of what the various cities across the region and the counties are doing by way of urban forestry. It's about 5 years out of date now. There are some communities where not much has changed. There's some communities that changed their codes, like Milwaukee would be one. You guys, it sounds like, have done a few things. But we recognize that every community is in a different situation. Portland just got done with this huge 5-year-long volunteer-powered inventory. And what we're looking to do is put some energy, put some resources into communities other than Portland. Because Portland has much farther to go, understandably, but we want to work with communities beyond Portland to take their programs to the next level. So just so you know, I just want to let you know that this is going on, and it could be a potential partnership if you're so interested. Right now, I've been actively talking with a planner at the city of Gresham, and Gresham's very, very interested in this. and I'll get more into like what it is here in a second, but I just want to know who I've talked to. I'm talking to some planners in Beaverton and also Hillsborough. Hillsborough has an inventory that's about 10 years old, like Portland, so they're not as interested in the inventory side of things, but they're still kind of interested in this collaboration idea. Nature Conservancy, surprisingly, has spawned a new interest in urban conservation, and they've been funding these sorts of things across the country, so they're very interested locally. And I've been working with a couple foresters at the Oregon Department of Forestry in the urban forestry program. Paul Reese recently retired there, but there's some new people there who are trying to build an infrastructure for small cities across the state of Oregon to be able to do their own street tree inventories and whatnot. So you wouldn't have to just reinvent the wheel like City Portland has done. You would just plug right into an existing system, and it would be a low-cost entry point for you. So what am I pitching? What am I proposing? It could be lots of different things. I'm with Gresham. They're very interested. They don't have anything like an inventory. They don't have an inventory at all. They're very interested in some type of volunteer-powered, the forester arborist supervised inventory, kind of what the city of Portland has done. And that is, I think that's a wise focus for them because, forestry can be a little bit, urban forestry can be a little bit politically thorny, and the politics there can be a little thorny. So it could mean other things besides that. That's one of my starting points because I'm coming out of having run a very successful citizen community science-based inventory with OakQuest, and so I'm familiar with how to run those sorts of things. And we could do it again for urban forestry for the whole region. There wouldn't be a need for Gresham to do something different from Oregon City, different again from Beaverton. We could just create a structure. We could have Oregon Department of Forestry helping us, guiding us, maybe even funding part of it, and we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's my first offer. That's one thing. But it could mean other things. We could, this fellow you mentioned, I'm sorry, I forget his name. Brian French. Why couldn't we, a group of cities, come together and hire a capable forester like a Brian French, who, instead of just like a one-off with each of these cities, we could negotiate and say, what can you do for Oregon City? What can you do for Gresham? What can you do for Beaverton? And we could negotiate kind of a group contract and hire an expert like that to help us with our codes. That's just an idea. So code development, street tree inventory, and then a lot of cities, I don't know, I'm sorry, I apologize, I should know this, but do y'all have an urban forestry plan, a strategy? Not yet.
No.
Okay, so a lot don't. I mentioned Hillsborough. They have this wonderful inventory. They've never done anything beyond that. They don't have a plan for how to use it. So that is another key step in the process. The last thing I think that I would pitch to you that I could offer as a representative of a nonprofit that is very interested in urban green infrastructure, that wants to see these cities grow their capacity, is we are very interested in the idea of funding this type of work through some type of cooperative or a collaborative grant. So what am I talking about? Well, I've been talking with Meyer Memorial Trust, and they are very interested in this sort of thing. And Meyer Memorial Trust, so Fred Meyer,
Okay.
Deep Pockets. And we are currently, so we've been talking with them. I've very successfully funded projects like this through the Metro Nature Neighborhoods program. Earlier you mentioned the Metro Enhancement Grant. That would be a perfect fit for Oregon City and increasingly other communities because they've expanded that. And then I haven't quite gotten there, but ODF has a pipeline into some U.S. Forest Service monies because U.S. Forest Service actually does fund urban forestry in urban settings as well. So there are a variety of opportunities. They're all just, at this point, ideas popping around in my head and people I've talked to. It's at this point, this is how OakQuest started. It didn't start with just an idea in one person's head, and it started with a conversation. And other ideas came, and we said, hey, that's good. Let's do it that way. Let's do it that way. So this is just the beginning of the conversation. And Francesca and Pam asked, how does this start? How how do we start an urban forestry program? And what you guys are doing is exactly how it starts. It starts with citizens being very interested and coming to groups like this and asking questions and the dialogue and the surveys. I love the survey and the community-powered inventory of one neighborhood, and then it becomes 2 neighborhoods and 3 neighborhoods. So this is exactly how it starts. Is the question? Is the answer? In my opinion, but. So I'm just going to plop that on your plate tonight, and we can have an ongoing conversation about it. It doesn't have to end tonight. I'm not looking for any kind of an up-down. I don't even have a proposal for you. I'm just wanting to hear your feedback, actually, more than anything, and your interest. I had planned to actually do that part second so that we could have a conversation, an open conversation. So, but I want to be sensitive to the time that we have, because I do also want to present this, and I can probably fly through this in like 15 minutes. So what would be the best thing to do, Pete, you think, on that?
That's up to the
Yeah, let's go ahead and make this presentation. Then we can.
Should we, and then just see where we're at with the time?
Right.
Okay, we'll let that kind of marinate. Okay,
we're all interested in oak.
Oh, okay. All right. So I mentioned I'm a biologist, conservation. I work for tribes, state of Washington, and now a consultant. And OakQuest started back when I was still at Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I was working on Washington's maps on the Washington side of the river. And I was working on the regional conservation strategy, and I think hopefully some of you guys know what the regional conservation strategy is. Can I see a show of hands? Okay, a few. I brought the last time I was here, I brought an executive summary, and I should have brought more for the new folks, but I can get those to you. But basically, the regional conservation strategy was a let's see here.
The right button.
There we go. So it was completed in 2012, and one of the priorities in that, it was very much a
Okay.
great. All right, thank you. Great. Okay. So I'm going to fly through some of these slides, and if there's questions about it, I can kind of come back to them. The regional conservation strategy was wrapped up in 2012, and it was really kind of a one big tent effort that involved state, federal, local, parks districts, soil and water conservation districts, nonprofits, consultants, everybody. What are the priorities for conservation in the region? And it also addressed things like active transportation and trails, urban forestry, all of that. And one of the priorities that came out of that was oak prairie conservation, our native oak prairie, and specifically talked about developing a map of where these remnant habitats are. So with our work, shortly thereafter, we formed the what was then called the Oak Mapping Work Group to address that, and we became a project of the Intertwine Alliance, which is a big nonprofit, over 150 organizations. I can tell you more about that later if you're curious. And so we've been active since 2011. At the beginning, we were just narrowly focused on mapping, but since then we've broadened our focus to include oak stewardship, teaching private landowners how to take care of their oaks and whatnot. And now we're working on a strategic action plan to guide our efforts going forward. So we've really broadened our focus. And so OakQuest was really just the very beginning of that. And our funding, this is just a handful of the organizations involved, but a lot of the funding for OakQuest and the stewardship work I'm going to be talking about came from these 5 organizations here. So why do we care about Oregon white oak so much? Well, it's all about biodiversity. Well, it's not all about biodiversity, but that's where I'm starting. There are over 200 species of plants and wildlife that are very dependent on these habitats, okay? And there's high degree of endemism, which means those species are not found in any other types of habitats. They're only found there. So you can't go up to the high Cascades and find them in an old growth Douglas fir dominated forest, okay? So, and there are very really intricate interrelationships between a lot of the invertebrates and the plant species. So this is Fender's blue butterfly here, and it feeds on a single species of lupin that it needs during its larval stage. And there's other examples of that on this slide, and I'm not going to take the time, but there's a whole host of these types of relationships. So we care a lot about it. There's been very large historical losses over the last 200 years. We have less than 2% of our prairies and our savannas left. There's a little bit more oak, but largely that has happened because of shifts in land use. Obviously, we have a lot more agriculture on the landscape, development, and then one of the biggies is the loss of the natural fire regime that included both natural and human-set fires by First Nations peoples. And so you can see a lot of the Willamette Valley historically was oak, prairie, or savanna, which is really a continuum of habitats. And of course, most of it now is no longer. This is a shorter version of a talk, so I'm going to kind of see a slide here. Okay, so I'm going to dive right into Oak Quest. So you kind of got the reasons why we're doing this. Oak Quest was a short duration, pulsed community science effort. So it happened 2 summers. Summer of 2014, summer of 2015. There were just community member volunteers, and there were professionals who participated. We trained folks. We formed teams. We had them using a single technology that allowed everyone to kind of see the work that was being done by everybody else. So it was sort of like help spawn this sort of notion that I was just like one person of many out there mapping oaks across the region. And so thank you, Bill, for participating. Bill was a volunteer. And so this is a little glimpse of what the interface was on a smartphone. People could kind of see what had been done previously. They could find their location on a map, and they could create a record, a point, basically, for an oak tree. And, of course, some people got very excited, and they wanted to map every Oregon white oak in their neighborhood, right? and we were telling people, don't do that, but some people did. And, some people were just very passionate. One of the biggest outcomes of this is, of course, we got this wonderful map, but this sort of unsung product of all this is we spawned this tremendous cadre of volunteers all across the region, many of whom had never even heard of Oregon white oak before that, who were all of a sudden instant advocates and stewards for the oaks in their neighborhood, not just the oaks on their property, the oaks in their neighborhood. And there was a sense of ownership about an oak tree maybe on their street that they would walk by every day and all this sort of stuff. So this is sort of why we did it this way, okay, to sort of help instill this sense of stewardship in the wider community, not just, with folks. Okay. I'm going to try to zoom through this. This is the kind of number of active volunteers we had for the 2 years. We ran it in total volunteer hours. We had slightly lower. We had more volunteers, but less time in the second year because people really they so much liked what we did the first year. It spawned all these sort of copycat efforts in the subsequent year. So we were kind of like our own worst enemy, but it was great. I mean, there's all these new, including Dan Miller, I would say. The whole, well, I don't want to say copycat, sorry, but Dan Miller has a whole work group now of people doing these community science efforts, and they're all over the region now, and they're doing these things called bio blitzes or eco blitzes, and that are much more broadly focused, not just on a single species like we were. Okay, so we picked Oregon white oak because it is emblematic of the entire ecosystem. So that's why we started there, and they're charismatic megaflora, as I call them. All right, before Oak Quest, this is what our map looked like of oak for the region. We had some maps. You can see there's some oak maps for the rest of the Willamette Valley, and those maps are a little, they're not great. We use them, but we're going to be working on improving those areas. And this is where we were after the 2 years with just field observations. So you can see we really filled in. Those are just field observations, and there's like thousands of records, and that's for people all over the region. And then the volunteers trained our eye. Yeah, I should point out where we are. Sorry.
There's mine right there.
So here's Oregon City here. Here's Vancouver, Washington. Hillsboro's out here, and here's Gresham. Okay, so this is really the urban area outlined in red. Okay, and this is where we focus the volunteers' effort. So Oregon City is right here.
No, that's Fish Eddie on the Willamette. And Oregon City.
Oh, sorry. Gosh, I'm embarrassed. Okay, I'm sorry.
That big curve is called.
Sorry. I apologize. Right there. Yeah, Oregon City's right there. Okay, thank you, Bill. I stand corrected. All right, and then so an important part of this was that the volunteers actually trained our eye. Those of us who call ourselves biologists and spend way too much time looking at GIS, geographic information systems, and aerial photographies. And from looking at this data for hours and hours and hours, Lori Hennings trained her eye, and then she trained my eye. And we were able to then subsequently map a whole bunch more oak, like 60,000 more. Okay, that was mostly Lori. Okay, and we are, and this is the initial release. Okay, that we've put out as of last September is what you see, the blue dots and the pink dots there, and we are very rapidly working now to fill in the rest of what I call the donut. So this is the urban area here. And Lori has been working on cleaning this up and making it reasonably complete. She's almost done. I've been working in North Clackamas in here, and I've actually already done, mapped this whole area myself. And now I'm working over on Chehalem, and I've done a huge chunk of Chehalem. And I have 2 or 3 other people who are helping us kind of in their spare time. So we have one person up.
People going out by McMinnville because I teach at Linfield.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that.
College tree,
let's talk about that afterwards, Nancy. So that we have someone working up here, someone working over here, someone working up here. So we're our goal is by 2018 we're going to have this whole of this larger area, which is the regional conservation strategy area, complete. Now I'm not sure yet about this, but I'm working on this because we've since when we started. Washington had the best maps. Well, we're going to blow past them. So I'm working with my replacement at WDFW to kind of see if we can get this done by June 18 as well. I'm not sure about that. All right. So point is, we're going to have a great map in June 2018. And so what do we do with that map? This is just more information about the inventory. I think I'm going to kind of skip through that. Great photos. Volunteers sent in the best photos, including photos that show just the human relationship with these trees, okay? So the great thing about this great story is this landscape was created, this was a social landscape, right? The Kalapuya, they burned these prairies. This was a community effort that constructed this ecosystem. This was a community effort that the remnants of it. So this is all part of the same system. It's all part of the same story. It's a social ecosystem. All right. Community engagement, I think I'm going to kind of jump over this a little bit because I want to get... We hired Savannah and Sequoia. A lot of this whole effort, it was their thing. I mean, we hired them. Savannah is a Klamath tribe member, and Savannah is a Klamath tribe member, and Sequoia is Siletz. So they're both Oregon tribes. Both tribes have connections to oak. And Nellie McConville, who is Nez Perce, was their supervisor, co-supervised them with myself, in addition to Judy Bluehorse Skelton at Portland State in the second year after Nellie left. So this was also to kind of cultivate next generation conservation leaders within Native American communities that were instrumental in kind of creating this landscape. So that was another vision for this project, and we were very successful. I'm happy to say that Savannah is working on will be working on a graduate degree at Portland State. She actually made a choice to switch majors, and she's doing ecological education and leadership now partly because of her experience with this. And Sequoia, this is really important to say. I need to say this. Sequoia was kind of in and out of school, on the streets. She now has a full-time job, and she's in school. And so this project was really instrumental in her actually developing a future for herself. So, okay. So anyway, so we hit a lot of bases with this project. So social environments. Part 2 of this was Kilipai Camas, which is demonstrating traditional ecological knowledge in the stewardship of these resources. And I'm not going to talk about that much. I can tell you more about it later if you want to hear. But Judy Bluehorse Skelton was the lead on that, and Savannah and Sequoia were partners as well. Some photos of volunteers and lessons learned. Start small, keep it simple, make it fun. I think is very relevant to our urban forestry discussions going forward. Collaborate. use technology, but understand it's a barrier for some people. All these things. Yeah, training, quality control, all that. I can bend your ear for hours about that stuff. Okay, I was the one that was answering the phone for the volunteers, you know. So I was very busy in the summer. Okay, so this is how we're already using the data, and I want to show you that. I mentioned the oak stewardship work that we're piloting in North Clackamas. We got some Soil and Water Conservation District money, worked with Nicole R. at the local office here, to take our OakQuest data and pinpoint landowners in these neighborhoods to reach out to them and say, hey, you have oak. We'd like to teach you how to landscape your yard in a way that will not be detrimental, but will actually enhance that and actually contribute to the wider ecosystem that you're a part of. So this is what we did. We had all these oak points, and then we made some really calculated decisions and used GIS, and we said, these are the communities we want to outreach to. We focused on owner-occupied, single-family residential properties because we had to make it easy for ourselves because we didn't have much money. And we wanted them to be close to natural areas with oak, so we've got that search image. We narrowed it down to about 1,000 people to do outreach to, and we got about 45 people to sign up. And some of those people dropped out, and then we got a few more to fill in. The end result was I'm trying to remember if I have a slide in here. Oh, I don't. I'm sorry. I forgot to put a slide in here that sort of summarized that. We started with some workshops spring of 2016, and we had 3 workshops. One in two or three in the spring, including a field trip to Camassia to kind of get people excited about it. And then this was all Mark leading this, Mark Wilson. And then we just wrapped up the last workshop this past fall. And so we have 3 yards now that have been naturescaped, all with native understory plants beneath oaks. And ultimately, this will hopefully inspire neighbors who walk by this to kind of say, hey, look, this is kind of cool. And we talk these, and these people are sort of, you know, they're going to talk to their neighbors. And so we hope to do more of this. And if you're interested in this, drop me a line. I can tell you about it. There's already plans for workshops that are going to begin out in the Tualatin Basin, led by the Tualatin SWCD. So I think I've talked your ear enough about it. I can tell you more about this oak model, which we tried to develop. This is we tried to start, before we got onto citizen science, we tried to use just remote sensing and just like no people in the room and just press a button and map oak. And it didn't work, okay? And frankly, it's not a very interesting story from the standpoint of community engagement. So I think I'm just going to let it rest. If I know Bill's interested in this kind of stuff, but there are any really, people who are curious about this, I can answer some questions, and I have slides here. But I think I'll just cut it off there. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. How long was that? Did I?
Oh, you nailed it, I think.
Was I? Okay. Okay. Good. I was kind of running blind there.
Good.
I'll go to the. So this is where we're at right now. We're focused on the in the outline areas and accuracy assessment. This is the link I forgot to mention. I can send this to you, and we can distribute it. But the maps, the preliminary release data is all up online. There's an online-based map. You can interact with it and zoom in and find your home and all that. So I can share that link with you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's all I got.
Yeah, one of the things that has been discussed is collaborations with high school and community college, and making the timing of that so that if we do further oak mapping or we do further tree inventories citywide, we time it with the school year or the academic year so that there are kids available and students available to help out. Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions?
We actually have mapped every oak on the Linfield College campus. We've measured every tree, and all the oaks have been mapped, and we have GPS coordinates and DBH. And about 15 years earlier, the biology faculty, one of the biology faculty, Corinne Sturgeon, I don't know if you know her, but she had mapped just the ones in the oak grove and had put tags in some of them, and I've been trying to figure out she didn't have GPS back then, so I'm trying to figure out from her map which trees are which, because most of the tags are gone, and trying to figure out how much they've grown in that time period, which has been interesting.
What happened with your aerial mapping? We did a lot of remote sensing of riparian habitat, and it was expensive because we had to do a lot of field verification and so forth. But it wasn't impossible.
Well, and we know it's possible for oak, and it's been done already up on Joint Base Lewis McChord in Puget Sound area, and it's been done other places. But there it was done with a dedicated remote sensing flight, like a quick bird flight. So it was very high resolution, a smaller footprint of an area. They had just really premier imagery to be able to do it, and great ground truthing data. Our area is about 1,000 times larger, and in spite of my efforts to try and get Metro to do a dedicated flight for this whole region, that's like politically a non-starter. And so we tried to use their fantastic regional imagery, which all the cities use. You've seen it. Mm-hmm. It is just the urban area, that inner red that I said, right. and it is actually 4-band. A lot of people don't know that. There's 4 bands, so there's a lot of data there. And combined with the LiDAR, the light detection and ranging, which is the laser altimetry. And one of the smartest guys at Metro in the Data Resources Center was doing the work using random forest models and multivariate statistics and all the tools that the remote sensing stats geeks use. Spent an inordinate amount of time, donated a ton of his time beyond his work hours. Wasn't able to crack the nut. We also had a very knowledgeable fellow over at the Oregon Biodiversity Information Center, Portland State, try it. Wasn't able to figure it out. What it needs, Bill, is a dedicated flight for the whole region, where the imagery is consistently
all done
at the same time. Everything's consistent. We don't have that.
I got you.
So it doesn't work to just cobble together what we got. I mean,
it's more fun to do field work anyway.
Well, you got to do both. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
Did you spend any time identifying oak groves that actually are old enough to be present when the native peoples actually planted them and hunted there?
Oh yeah. I'm sure many of these oaks have been around.
I don't think the
longer
native...
than longer than far older than the 1800s.
How old can they get? Because I wasn't sure about that.
Well, it depends. Some of the size, the size can be really deceiving.
Oh, I know that.
But particularly if you're in rocky, shallow soiled areas, you can have a really small tree that's incredibly old.
Yeah.
But easily 300 or 400 years.
One of the historians, he said that the native people kept those groves and did control fires.
Yeah.
And basically set up their lawn chairs with their bows and arrows and waited for the deer to come in, and it was just the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I skipped over all of that, and that's the other reason we care about this is the cultural significance.
Yes.
And I kind of hurried out past that, and that's my problem. But and the deer and the acorns, obviously people, and the camas. But a lot of people forget that there's so much focus on salmon in the Northwest, and we talk about it as the primary food source. The oak prairies were really the breadbasket. This is where a lot of the starches came from, and it wasn't just camas, huh?
They leached them in the ground.
They leached them in the ground, yeah.
Fascinating. That
the acorns
come back 6 months later.
Yeah, they leached them in the streams out and to make them to take the tannins away and the camas, but. Of course, it wasn't just the acorns and camas. There's about 5 or 6 other native bulbs. Uca or Diclostema congesta is one of them. Cluster lilies, calicortus. There are a variety of native bulbs, and of course, why is it all bulbs? Well, the fire would burn right over these areas, and they would, still be there. And we're probably promoting these food sources and cultivating them in a kind of incipient agricultural model. like we think. And there's a lot more work that's been done on that in California. That there is actually evidence that people were reseeding areas, harvesting bulbs, moving them around.
Mushrooms. They use
mulching,
a lot of mushrooms.
Even tilling. So
Right.
it's we have this notion of pastoralists, agriculturists, hunter-gatherer. It's a gradation in there.
Yes.
So anyway, are we probably. Anyway, I would like to kind of go back to the first part. I would hope we could keep the conversation going with what you guys are working on and what I'm trying to do across the region, and just stay in touch.
Absolutely.
I don't know where things are going. I mean, I know Gresham is on board. They're like, we want to work with you on this. I don't know about that for Beaverton. I don't know about that for Hillsborough, and so I'd like to stay in touch with you. I would love to work. I want to have a city in Clackamas County, and I think Oregon City is a great fit for this idea that I have. So anyway, let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do.
I've probably spent
Appreciate
over my
it.
time allotment, so I'll
No, thank you, Ted.
clear out. Thank you.
No, the people before you took your time, actually. The people before you took your time.
For good cause.
Okay, got a presentation. We do have time for public comments. We've had one already because it fit into the scope of what we're talking about. Is there anybody else that has signed up for a public comment of 3 minutes?
We can't even get Jesse to say something.
Let's make a note of that.
Okay.
I wish that this place was filled up every month.
So do we.
We can't serve beer.
That works, though.
We could go to a place that did. But anyway.
Comment about that. I actually run my neighborhood tree team back in Portland, and last night we had Dave Hedberg, who wrote From Stumptown to Tree Town, speak, and we picked a venue where there was beer, and we filled the place up. The city Parks and Recreation Urban Forestry representative said he's never seen one of those talks so successful as a beer, he said.
Well, we got places in Oregon City we could do that too.
Tell David his book was Shine Tonight and Folded Edges to pass on for good ideas in here.
Okay, well, no public comment. We'll go on ahead to the new business discussion items. It's our work plan update, so I'm not quite sure that's new business, but in any case.
Yeah, so last time we evaluated our planning sheet was October 26th, and our two top projects at the moment, priority-wise, are the one we've been discussing, which is trying to enhance the Heritage Tree Program, and also the stream and trail interpretive signage. As we've discussed at the last meeting, the Public Works Department has agreed to help the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council with their signage. And I haven't had any further discussions with Martin Montalvo about efforts beyond that yet. So the status of that is pretty much the same as it was last month.
No, I'll have a comment on it.
Do you have a comment on that? Okay.
Later. Yeah.
All right. So go for it, Doug. That's fine.
Right now?
Yeah, if you wish. Yeah.
There's a new person, Brian, I forget his name, in Stormwater. In Public Works.
Okay.
Anyway, he came to the Natural Resource Committee and actually put down some potential sites for signs. They were very good sites. We made a recommendation of a different one on one of the creeks. But they're clearly dealing with the major creeks that we've been talking about. They're looking for positions of signs in Abernathy Creek, Coffee Creek, Singer Creek, Newell Creek, Coffeeout Creek, and Mud Creek. And so the ones that we prioritize there are ones that they have now outlined as a place where the signage could go. We need to clarify exactly what is involved in the signage. They will make the signs that actually give the tree label, the tree labels, the stream labels on the signs.
The stream names.
The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council also has a larger sign. It was not quite clear whether the signposts that they would be putting in would deal with ours, and that was something for clarification. But that is progressing. And so the ones that we have here that they listed as actually I guess it's our top 6 in terms of the list we came up in terms of priorities, are in fact ones that they are finding places for signage for.
Excellent. Thanks. Timing-wise, do we know when Public Works would be producing those? Yeah. I can find out.
It probably depend a little upon us. We made a commitment to, we have funds that we needed to expend. We are expending the production of our own signs that indicate the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, and we have committed funds to purchase 50 of those. Some of those will eventually go in the county, some of them in the city, but we decided we had the funds available. If we waited too long, we were going to lose those funds, and so we've committed to making excess signs of our own. And I do not know when the signage would go up in the city, but I just want to comment that Public Works has worked very, very well on this particular project.
Okay, thanks. I will loop back with Brian and report back on that in the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what are your priority streams?
Right here.
The ones that they've got listed are the priorities we put on our list.
Oh, okay.
1 through 6.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Let's see.
Thank you very much. Wow.
Bottom of the first page, this may be a little out of place, but it says, and it's not related to the stream signage thing, but so I may need to find the right spot for this, but it says, pursue and advance habitat projects under Lower Harbor Trust Fund, NRDA, Clackamas Cove Restoration. So John Runyon and with the consultant that's working with Eric Underwood on the Clackamas Cove project. Right now, I've been informed that until phase 2 of Clackamas Cove receives planning approval, we won't have a clear idea of where the mitigation projects are going to occur. So it's a little bit early yet on that one. And when the Cove developers move forward with phase 2 land use approval request, we can report more specifically about where the mitigation is going to happen. The Urban Renewal Commission has given their approval for some changes to the phase 2, but those changes have not been through planning department yet. So that's what Laura told me this afternoon. So we'll keep you informed, and I'll talk to John Runyon when we know
The
more.
Cove was approved without a mitigation plan?
No, it was. It was just that
This
this is a separate...
Huge enhancement.
Oh.
The Cove received Natural Resource Overlay District approval as part of their master plan. But in terms of leveraging the actual mitigation approach and
Pete, the meeting I came from just now was the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association regarding the Cove, and the developer made it very clear that he's approaching the URC board, Urban Renewal Commission, in about 30 to 45 days with requests to make some adjustments to allow him to then proceed in a manner that would start the project by next spring in earnest. And he also told us that the Twin Peaks project with the apartments is probably at least 14 months out before it gets built because of delays. So,
well, yeah, and I
which
think
you can talk about.
It's important to differentiate between the in-water work that requires Corps of Engineers and and Fish and Wildlife approval, and
Right.
on-site land work, which is what is the subject of the city's natural resource approval. So, yeah. All right. Continue to collaborate with the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. June 3rd there's an event coming up. Bill, do you know about? Can you comment on that at all? I don't have a whole lot of information about it, but
I think it's pretty much the final
preferred
design.
I got an email just this week from them because I did the survey and put my email in there, and I got an email from them saying that they had finalized, at least all the survey and analyzing the survey. So
good.
I believe. I mean, I attended a meeting, and I believe they said it's broke up in phases. Phase 1, I think they have 85% design level at this point. So there's still things to go on the phase 1, but they're moving right along.
Right.
At glacial speed.
Yes.
Goal 2, address critical facility needs. This had to do with the Public Works Center and deferred maintenance issues of parks. With respect to the Public Works Center master plan, the plan has been submitted for approval by the Historic Review Board, and the site plan review is in completeness review by planning. So once that application has been deemed complete by the planning department, we'll be doing public notices. It will be a type 3 review for a master plan, so it involves public hearings by the planning commission. And you had a presentation on that and did a tour. Let's see. So that's ongoing. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Goal 3, NRC Responsibility 1. I'm just going to list the NRC activities. Assist with connectivity between the Rossman landfill site, Interpretive Center, Cove, and Willamette River. This is largely related at this point to the Cove project, but it has also been discussed as ways to improve trail connections as well through the Trails Master Plan.
I'm going to make a comment. Public Works had investigated, I think we brought it before, there's a large box culvert there.
Box culvert.
On Highway 213, and also basically a trestle with a lot of clearance there on the Union Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Neither ODOT nor Union Pacific are interested in having a path go through there.
Yeah. So there's a jurisdictional
Mr. Chairman,
there.
Where did you hear that from? Was that
Public Works?
Public Works on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, there may be other ways, but that's not
too bad. That would have been a nice connection.
Yes.
Advocate for enhancement and maintenance of the Metro South wetland as a north gateway to Oregon City.
Yeah.
Jerry?
I can discuss that.
Yeah.
Metro, for some reason, when that was built, that was a mitigation requirement of the filling of about 34 acres of land, was that wetland had to be created, a detention area, and then people came in, including people from the Environmental Learning Center, which I was involved with, to make a lot of improvements. And now they're treating it as a water quality feature that they don't want animals or people in. And I'm a little upset about that. Because if you don't want animals or people, who do you want? And the issue is they're so concerned about anything happening in there that would change any of the water quality and cause them not to meet national pollution discharge permit requirements, that they don't want any changes. So we were going to go in and do trails and all sorts of improvements to it, but they won't let any of that happen. And my attitude is, what is so bad about your water quality? It turns out the physical runoff of Metro South transfer station coming in there has so much petroleum and other things in it. You walk out there on the soils during the summer and you can just see oil, I mean, petroleum kind of distillates, petroleum kind of emerge. So I wish we wish someone could have a talk with them, because Carlotta Collette and I have talked about this, and she's kind of shaking her head too. She's our Metro counselor, and she believes the place should be not off limits to the public. But almost the attitude is that it's going to be off limits to the public. That's not why it was created. So I don't know what to do in my spare time.
I hate to say it, that's kind of a bait and switch, isn't it?
Pardon?
That's kind of almost a bait and switch. Because there's so much effort's put into that.
Yeah. Well, there's a trail. There's a 3/4 of a mile trail. There's also things in there that we need just a little bit of attention. But I don't know what the committee would like to do. I'd like to do something, but I don't want to get shot.
Well,
is there a trail master plan?
There is a trail master plan from 1999. Yeah, it's fairly old and needs an update. But yeah, and I'm also thinking, Jerry, that if Metro has a national pollutant permit, and the city has one as well, and what affects them affects the city permit. I assume they're not separate. If they are separate, it'd be good to know. But if they're not separate, then it's something we could address with Martin Montalvo, our Public Works Operations Manager, who you know. So I'll make a note of that.
Okay. All right.
North Gateway.
It's a really beautiful site. Ponds.
Yeah, but from where? I'm trying to.
I'll show it to you sometime. Right across from Home Depot's entrance is this.
You'll see it as you're going by,
Yeah.
the wooded area.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know the area, but it's.
Yeah.
Okay. Continue with work on habitat restoration. We talked about. Moving on to goal 4 and NRC responsibility number 1. Communicate with neighborhood associations, citizen involvement commission, and business community.
Dee Dee has been very
We've
active.
We've been going to those meetings.
Yes,
very pleased.
doing good there.
All of us are. I got credit for going to a meeting the other day, and I wasn't even there. Someone said, we heard all about your program, what you're doing. I'm going, but I was at the McLaughlin neighborhood meeting. And which McLaughlin is the perfect place to start, because you guys are rabble-rousers. You guys are an active neighborhood.
Okay.
So
Conduct a natural resources tour as an annual event.
I can comment on that for a second. We talked about in the fall maybe doing a routine or somehow routine walking tours, and I tested the idea, and the second one went better than the first. I think Dee Dee would agree. She was very helpful.
It was wonderful.
It doesn't seem to be any end to the interest in when you combine natural history, geography, geology, whatever, plant discussions with cultural history. It's just like, wow, this whole new dimension. People are not happy with just talking about history. They really respond when we bring in the geology, geography discussions. And so the next one will be held here end of May, called 2 Rivers and a Rowboat. It's the story of Clackamas Rapids and how it affected Oregon City's ability to be a major port and all that. But anyway, so instead of trying to do an annual one, I'm still willing to try to do that. But this walking tour thing, anybody that wants to help out, I mean, it's really going well. Anybody that felt
first time we had 30 people. I think this last time I think there was
43.
almost
Yep.
over 40
In the rain.
Yeah, and no one went away.
Through what auspices are these being done?
Well, I'm doing them through my organization now, but I'd like to. The whole thing was, and you all signed a letter or authorized a letter, which is in a grant to support some marketing I'd like to do. But the deal is, I wanted this to support somehow our community role of getting out in the community. So, I mean, I'm always telling people that I'm a member of the Natural Resource Committee, so does Dee Dee, and then she talks about the Parks Foundation. And Parks Foundation board members are there, a lot of them. It's pretty surprising.
And we're all sharing the mailing list.
Yeah, exactly.
I have my list for you that I have.
But in the past, we used to do a bus tour 3 years ago. Pete helped us get the funding to do a bus tour, and I still think that would work. if you want to do it. But
See, all these same tours can lead into our heritage tree tours. All of them, just all you do is you pick one you like.
yeah.
It's city docents.
All right. Preparing educational materials about street trees for distribution to the public. Diliana in our department has been helping me upgrade our street tree brochure. It's not quite ready for redistribution just yet, but
I also
should be.
brought some examples. I'll pass them on to you. That
Please.
she might want to. I just kind of went around and got some examples of
Okay.
stuff that's already out there.
That'd be good.
You made a comment about something occurring in the Trail News.
For the Heritage Tree program, we had to put an article in there.
Okay. And that's fine. I just wanted, that's a very busy document. I mean, it's got
The Trail
everything
News,
in all the
yeah.
city.
Yeah.
And I think we need to look for something that either it's right up front on the cover where people can be attracted to it. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Facebook. We need a Facebook page.
Well, yes, we do that too.
But we have to make
You mean
everyone
a
like
separate
it and share
document
it.
for heritage
That's
trees?
pretty good.
Well, I think we have to have a separate document that goes out to one point or another to the public on heritage trees. That the other thing was in terms of the Trail News thing, if there was some way that you could make that the front cover
Yeah.
piece.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe we could
Okay.
Really pretty tree.
We
Maybe
will.
we can actually do a couple of community workshops. Say who would be interested in having help filling out their information on a heritage tree. Because sometimes just even looking at the one little application, but you say, and you can get everyone down and help them fill out their application, help them write out their support letters, document where it comes from. So you can do a little blocks at a time.
Yeah.
Just, because you see, especially maybe we could even do it at the Pioneer Community Center. Start with McLaughlin Neighborhood, your backyard.
Point taken there.
Yeah, brighter.
I'll talk to Denise Kai about getting a front page type article on the next Trail News.
Okay.
Let's see. Earth Day. Participate in natural resources events associated with Arbor Day, Earth Day at city or urban renewal agency owned lands in partnership with Greater Oregon City Watershed and Friends of Trees. So partners change year to year and time changes year to year, and the responsible departments tend to change year to year as well. But this year, the Earth Day and Arbor Day celebration will be celebrated on Earth Day, April 29th at the park. So I've given you a copy of that card. They're calling it Oregon City Enhancement Day. There is going to be tree planting coordinated by the Parks Department, and the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association is going to be replanting planter boxes along 7th Street.
What was wrong with Earth Day?
Pardon?
What was wrong with Earth Day?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you. This is something that the department that's managing this has coined. So,
Okay.
yeah. It's not
Well, and it's a
within
week
the-
after Earth Day anyway. The 22nd
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Earth
Yeah,
Day.
22nd is there.
Yeah, Lake Oswego is on the 22nd.
There's so many things going on the 22nd, though.
Yeah,
so-
it actually makes sense for them to have it on a different day.
Yeah, there'd be more people who could do stuff that aren't committed to
We-
something else.
We'll still have an Arbor Day proclamation, and this year, but I'm going to continue to advocate for, more collaboration and better publicity for the
Might be a good
event.
spot to start a survey at that celebration. There's, I'll go with you.
But please do
Oh,
come
the tree
and
huggers will
participate.
be there.
That's
There'll be
right.
a lot of work to be done and a lot of opportunities to help out. strengthen and encourage participation in the Heritage Tree Program. I think we've discussed that.
The first half of the meeting was on that.
Let's see, goal 4 and NRC. Ongoing activities including updating the city's water resources, streams, and wetlands inventory, local wetland inventory, and statewide Goal 5 process. Metro Title 3 and Title 13 enhancement education for habitat improvement. Consideration of a natural resources annexation policy. Consideration of tree protection and upland habitat code amendments. So those are all ongoing items.
I want to come up to the water resource inventory updates and so forth. Brian Bond, who's the lead Metro natural resource person, was talking to me, and the way it stands now, you get the designation, then you have to go through a major process. So the state makes a designation, and then you go through a public process. He was wondering why, when a state designation is made, why cannot there be a automatic buffer set up until a more formal process occurs?
That's a good idea.
And why that can't be done in the code.
Like automatically assign a 50-foot buffer? Yeah.
Which might be reviewed at a later date, but to provide the protections as the state identifies new inventory streams and wetlands.
Well, I don't think Metro's code, Title 3 or 13, requires that. Right now, the model code, but...
well, no, that's all right. I'm not talking about Metro. It's just that he was suggesting in terms of the things that we had been talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Partly, I think it has to do with predictability and changing the goalpost rule by state law. Once you've set up and delineated a resource and a buffer, that gives, your applicant some predictability. And under state law, you're not allowed to change the goalposts, particularly for applications that have been submitted. So everything's based on the code that you have adopted at the time. If there was a delineation that occurred immediately after an application came in, and that state law would not allow you to change that. So there are some legal concerns with that, I think. But I can look into it. I'd be happy to talk to Brian Vaughn more about that.
One got installed before anybody had applied for anything.
Yeah, but if one was done before anybody, I think,
better.
that's the situation where we.
I think the situation that you had in Kenema, the applications hadn't gone through, the delineation had already occurred, and yet we hadn't set up the buffers.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So there was no buffer under state law, and there's no buffer applied by the city's code because it was an isolated wetland. Yeah. And our code has 3 separate passages that specifically state that it's exempt in those situations.
Isn't the reason, maybe I'm wrong, that the state doesn't require the buffer because it's a jurisdictional decision of the local?
They just regulate the wetland itself, not the buffer.
So the state never puts in buffers. Is that true?
I don't know if that's true or not, but they certainly didn't in this case. They just regulate the wet, delineated part of the resource, which doesn't necessarily mean you're losing the wetland, but you are losing the riparian area right next to it, potentially, or at least the upland area next to it.
Well, this is the dilemma of what's, we're discussing or hearing from some of the people in Kenema. And when I called the state, which I told you at the last meeting I did about it specifically, because I know those state wetland specialist types. I mean, I just sent them an email and I never expected to hear anything back. Boom, the guy got right back.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what we do is delineate the wetland, which is what you said. But if buffering is needed, it's up to the local jurisdiction, because we don't get into those local land use issues other than defining the nature of the resource and what needs to be protected.
Yeah.
So kind of like catch-22.
Yeah.
Doug's question's a good question, though.
Yeah, I mean, we would apply the buffer if the wetland touches the overlay district. The code would need to be amended to apply the buffer for every instance of a delineated resource. It could be done, though, but it would still be a code change.
And part of the issue there in Kanema is that the overlay is not totally defined. Is that not true?
Yeah, I mean, the current overlay is a snapshot in time based on the 1999 inventory. And then individual properties come in and develop, and then they delineate the resource. And if it just happens that that resource doesn't touch the current buffer, the buffer doesn't get applied. Yeah. So, but in most cases it does, and it hasn't. In most cases, the wetland or the stream hasn't deviated to such an extent that buffer protection is lost. It's generally it changes as you do the inventory. So this was an isolated incident. Okay. Let's see. NRC responsibility number 4, maintain a list of Natural Resource Committee priorities to share with Planning Commission and City Commission. This is essentially an ongoing activity, but it becomes more important at the end of the year. Each meeting raises new priorities, so it's important to keep this one up. Is there anybody want to comment on this one?
Well, those are the two items we took before the commission last year. Was for the budget planning was the streams and also the the delineation, both the delineation and the stream signage.
Right. Providing updates and annual reports about NRC accomplishments and recommendations to the City Commission, Neely and Warnes in October. Schedule joint meeting with PRAC to develop working relationship and develop budget support for joint projects.
Have we done that yet?
Nope.
Not yet.
Phil is a very pleasant person to work with. I think he would be open to this, but maybe Scott would have been too. I don't know. What's your take, Mr. Chairman?
Well, this is brought up to PRAC already, the interest.
Okay.
I serve on that committee as well.
And you are on PRAC, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they want to meet?
I'm sure they would. I think I don't think there's any problem with having a joint meeting. I just don't think we've skipped anything. I think we need to develop agenda to do it, though.
Right.
I mean,
Sure.
it's
Talking points.
some
Sure.
talking points to make a presentation. So that's something we need to think about.
Okay.
And also perhaps talk to PRAC about doing the same thing, items that we think are of common interest.
Okay.
Trees.
Are you open to some
Trees.
thoughts on that subject? Well, I'd like to work on some recommendations
Sure.
regarding beavers, because it's a big nuisance, they think, but it's how you address the issue, other than shooting them, but
I don't think we should.
I think you need to put a night cam on them.
You know the video that went national of our beaver.
Oh, the one came up in Surf City?
Yeah.
Yeah, and walked it back home.
The police escorted it to Abernathy Creek. Took them about 20 or 30 minutes to do it.
how did I miss that?
Oh, it was on television. It was so cute.
It was great. It was great.
I want to see that. We
Oh, that was great.
How long ago was that?
Oh, about a half a year.
No, it was like 2 years
2
ago.
years.
It wasn't
I guess
last
it
year. It
was 2
was
years.
winter
Yeah,
before.
it was 2 years. Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
It was really cute.
Well, two police officers had
actually,
little nightsticks and just kind of tap the beaver to make sure it went where it was supposed to go. And there's a third police officer taking the video. The police chief wasn't very happy.
it became a huge issue in Denver Metro, and a group actually formed that traps and administers birth control to beavers.
Wow. To the beavers.
Anyway,
My dog will show you where.
it is a law topic, so let's go back into the goals.
Okay.
You know what, if we wanted, because we are both tree huggers with the PrAC and NRC, I kind of, maybe we could, one of our agendas is find one of the parks that we like, maybe, is our cemetery a park?
Yes.
All right, why don't we, and there's a group that are working for grants to get, for one thing, just the veterans' headstones, and get stories of them. We should do a tree inventory.
Let's set
Work
up
with those, yeah.
in our next agenda, it's taking a half hour to brainstorm items that we think would be of joint interest to PrAC and ourselves.
Okay. And then likewise,
His backyard, too.
Planning Commission coming up. We have two meetings a month scheduled, regular meetings for Planning Commission, and if the NRC would like to engage the Planning Commission in discussion of items that are in the zoning code, such as we heard tonight, then it's a timely point for discussion. The Planning Commission is currently 6 members, and I think they're appointing the 7th, or have appointed the 7th, so they're back up to full membership. What time would be? I mean, we can schedule a work session, more informal situation, as well, when we have a light agenda. So
Okay.
yeah,
Maybe this agenda item I'm talking about should be a longer one, and so that we actually talk about what we want to talk about ahead of time as part of the work session.
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So. See what we can do in working that into our next agenda, both for the two pieces, the park, or the PrAC, and also the Planning Commission.
Okay. Yeah. And okay, so I'll update this and send it out to you all. Send it to Phil and Laura, Phil Lewis and Laura Turway, and John Lewis and Martin Montalvo, who are all the department heads. And we'll see where the next agenda's.
Before we leave the
pages.
document, I didn't catch it quick enough here. Goal 5, whatever the commission's goal there is, we had a specific thing about economic development strategies involving Lower Harbor Trust Fund. I heard tonight, and I knew this, but I wasn't sure, that the study that was done by John Runyon and Associates with his recommendation has been given to the city. Is there some way we could look at this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because his recommendations were very well, I think, thought out, or have him come back and give us an update.
Yeah, I'll talk to him. He wanted to make sure that the timing of his update was done in coordination with.
Or if we
Urban
could
Renewal
access the
Commission.
document, love to look at it myself. But
Okay, yeah. Let me get a hold of that and send it around.
okay, wonderful.
Yeah, document.
Is that the way we spell harbor?
No.
Probably not.
Stutterer.
That's the way they say it in Boston.
It's a pirate.
Pirate says.
Okay. Very good. And then I believe we're at the point of communications.
Right.
I can start off. The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council has been working with the Environmental Learning Center to do a salvage operation on basically amphibians and potentially water reptiles before the work season occurs of the restoration of the site. Somehow we didn't get the final permit from ODFW, and I think something got misplaced in the line, not on our end, but in any case, we have gotten the permit as of today.
Oh.
Well, we were told, and that disappointed me greatly, that what we're saying is to take the critters to another location, and then after the work period is done, then bring some of them back. They do not permit the latter. They expect natural recolonization of the area, and so that wasn't what I thought the salvage effort would be. I thought it would be enabling the recolonization to occur earlier by bringing some of the species back.
Absolutely.
But that, in fact, has been denied as part of the permitting process.
Did they explain what their reasoning is?
That it'll be naturally recolonized anyway.
Would they allow the relocation within a very small geographic area?
We'll do that. We were going to do that with the adult salamanders and reptiles. We would have taken them out of the in-stream area and put them probably downstream, and so they could migrate back.
Right.
That would have been done anyway. But I was thinking of the efforts to harvest egg masses and juveniles and so forth, come into the fall, try to gather up some of the juveniles and bring them back. So it would happen at a quicker rate. Permit.
Well, the area, Doug
I'm
and I
sure
know
they
this
have
well,
a
the area from one existing building, the old Smucker's Cannery, down to Beaver Creek Road, which is 850 lineal feet, 650 lineal feet, has got a series of channels that we built in there years ago that we're cleaning those up, not the channels, but the adjoining land, and if that would work for you.
Yeah, well, that's what we will do. That was a plan for the adults.
Oh,
anyway.
okay. But the egg masses, I see.
The egg masses and so on.
Could they be in the in-stream area too? Some of there's ponded areas in there too.
If we could do that, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I need to walk out.
Yeah, I'd be glad to show you.
But in those areas, is the water there throughout the summer?
Yep.
Okay.
Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, that would probably
help.
Help a lot. And the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council is doing its annual project at Abernathy Creek Park, and Jerry and his salvage operation there at the Environmental Learning Center, we've got some materials that we're going to replant down there. Last year we took the effort of getting some of the reed canary grass out of there so we could come up in this time and replace it. That area that we removed, we were very effective in remove the reed canary grass, and now it's all a mass of Himalayan blackberries. So, we managed to take care of one of the invasive, and another one comes in within a year's time. So we got to deal with those in order to get the snowberry, which is we're planting out there, and some 9-bark as well.
What you need to do is enlist the reed canary beaver, who's bright yellow, who will only eat reed canary grass instead of trees.
Right.
Good luck. And those are my comments, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Well, I should mention there's been a lot of advancement in terms of the planning of what we call the more natural features in the as part of the Riverwalk piece, and so that's going on. There was a presentation that Brian Vaughn made at Metro, which I attended, but he's come here before, but it's advanced quite a bit since his presentation here.
Right. That was just recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
All right.
What else?
So,
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
I was going to give you an update on street lighting, but if I could ask for a continuation on that till the next meeting. We're waiting for some information. John Lewis has contacted PGE and asked the staff who are responsible at PGE for planning the LED lighting throughout the city to provide us some feedback on the lighting quality that we discussed at the last meeting. So I'll have that available hopefully at the next meeting.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to report?
Well, went on Jerry's tour.
Our tour.
That was your tour, but anyway, our tour.
Yep.
The port and cities. That was really fascinating. It was really, really good. I've been involved with the Oregon City Parks Foundation. They have an Ivy Pool coming up on May 6th, first Saturday in May, from 9 o'clock. Registration being at 8:30 till 12. That'll be at Waterboard Park. That's a significant thing. Hopefully we can tell it at the enhancement day.
What day again is it, May?
May 6th, the first Saturday in May, Kentucky Derby Day.
Okay.
I won't be there. I've got to go to the Kentucky Derby. And that was the Ivy Pool. I've really kind of been going to a lot of the various different neighborhood association meetings, and everyone's been very well received. They really, they're like everyone else. They want more people to come to their meetings too. Mm-hmm. I meant to get up at our Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association. There's a great presentation on our history of our cemetery, Mountain View, and all the works that they're doing. We need to partner with those people too. We have so many cool things going on in our city, but we're all pedaling these wheels, and sometimes we need to get on the bicycle with 6 people pedaling it. And I've just picked up information that could go in files. Here's the little Arbor Day mailer and some inventory tree history, some walking tour tree history stuff from different cities that I thought wouldn't hurt to put in a file, give it to somebody who's going to be putting that information together, because other people's materials can inspire our own materials
What
being
are you
made.
thinking about in terms of the cemetery thing? Exactly.
Well, if we do something at the cemetery, we could gather with the people that are taking the inventory right now on the graves and historical graves. There are some great trees up there, and Lake Oswego just nominated a heritage tree in their Pioneer Cemetery, which then got my wheels rolling, thinking, there's a great Camperdown elm tree in there, and I had tulip trees that I think that we could go through that, our own cemetery.
A great example is Lone Pine in Portland.
Yeah.
Right.
Friends of Lone Pine
Right.
and all that.
That's
What I was going to say is there's an area that's a slide, well, I don't know if it's that ancient, but a slide had occurred there with several sump ponds in an area below the grave sites and so forth. A lot of people put up memorials where they've scattered the remains in others, and they put up these memorials out of stone. They're very beautiful.
Right.
They're down there.
Yeah, there's that little Potter's Field also.
Yeah.
Down in that area, and that's real hard. They're going to hopefully clean that whole little area up, and again, we have several Civil War veterans up there, and that's significant. And it's really nice that they're going to work on getting the gravestones. But in the meantime, I think we could partner and do the trees.
Yeah.
That's Lewis's backyard. Phil Lewis, I think. Isn't that Phil Lewis that's up there? Is it?
Yeah, that's
John.
right. Well, no, that's not his office. No, that's Jonathan's.
Jonathan's, okay, but it's
Yeah.
their backyard. We might as well attack it.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I just have pieces of paper to turn in to Peter or whoever would like to have them and utilize them to copy. And then I was up at the college and I got everyone the harbor culture schedule, so we can see that new program coming up. And I'll pass it this way linear, because it's a great program that's happening. And Rodney Walters is from Virginia Tech, and he basically helped write the book on a lot of that stuff and did a really beautiful presentation. And we have a wealth a wealth right here in our backyard that we're going to be tapping.
Very good.
Like it or not, they're going to get tapped. But I'll pass this out. It's a beautiful program, and that I think we could actually utilize too for some of our things that we're doing for Enron.
Very good. Bill?
I don't have anything.
Anything? Okay. And Jerry, I don't know if you wanted to expand upon your absence period.
Well, I'll be real quick. First issue is I don't know they're on the agenda when you did an agenda update. Waterboard Park was something we're hoping to bring to this group, and Mike Mitchell and the Parks Foundation are supporting that effort to deal with the hillside. This has nothing to do with the public works area. We'd like to be able to schedule that sometime, I know. But regarding the Cove meeting, what the Cove developer is really trying to do, as he put it very clearly, he had a geotech guy that he hadn't seen in 20 years, does a lot of his work in the past, but who was there because they're looking at all the stuff going on behind the shopping center. If you've been seeing what's going on, everything's delayed because of weather, but there's other factors, and that is they keep interacting with plumes or seeps of industrial waste that they didn't expect would be there, which I'm surprised. It's been there for 40 years, probably moving and migrating toward the Cove as the landfills up gradient from it continue to decompose. DEQ, you know about this, Pete, put a lid on that whole operation and said you've got to treat all the runoff on 35 acres of land back there. It can't go in the Cove. So there's interception ditches all the way around the somewhat flat areas to intercept all the runoff during a rainstorm, then let it flow by gravity, and then pump it from sumps into treatment units. There's 9 of them over there, all linked together. You know about that?
No, it
Linked
must be
together.
part of the erosion control
Linked
permit.
together to treat through bioremediation, filtration, and other techniques the effluent. Then 2 to 3 times a week, tankers come in there and take the treated effluent, which still must have something that they're concerned about, up into Washington to be dealt with. So, I mean, to me, it's kind of overkill, but, DEQ's into the whole mix now.
DEQ
So,
permit, yeah.
Ed, the developer of the Cove, Phase 2, the Esplanade and the condominiums, we don't call condominiums, whatever we call them these days, townhouses, is trying to avoid digging in the ground any more than he needs to. Every time they dig over there, they're finding more problems. So his proposal is to come back to the URC, Urban Renewal Commission, here in about 30 to 45 days with a density increase slightly over what it was. I shouldn't say slightly, over what it was, but not as great as what he was discussing in December, which got people kind of surprised, and try to build the buildings on concrete pedestals so they don't have to dig or continue to dig from the Cove to try to bring in fill, because they don't have good fill in the Cove. So that was an interesting...
This is absolutely mind-boggling.
It's a difficult site. It's a terrible site.
Well, and we knew it was a difficult site before anybody ever turned to shovel the dirt. Was not this property surveyed for hazardous materials and being downstream of the landfill? Good
There was a
grief.
level 2 or level 3.
So now we're going to figure out what to do about a problem that existed before a shovel of dirt was turned, and we're going to try to work around that. That's just not a good way to do stuff. And I know it's too late, but I find that pretty disturbing.
Yeah, then it was a
And the
difficult
geotech
project
that
for
was there,
planning to
since you
review.
mentioned it, said he's done this for 30 years. He said you just don't know what you're going to run into because you're dealing with diffuse stuff moving through and migrating in various areas. And so I'm just saying what was presented. Anyway, so but on the other subject, hopefully we could take a look at Waterboard Park, some ideas there to try to work with the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries to make it a significant natural area at some time in the future on our agenda. So, unrelated to the public works site.
The next item on the agenda is future agenda items, so if you want to discuss
Well, we
that.
got,
I don't know what your agenda looks like.
well, we already mentioned having a discussion about what we want to discuss with PRAC and what we want to discuss with the Planning Commission. Doesn't take some time.
Okay.
But we all should come prepared to have that discussion in terms of items that we think are germane.
Sure.
on the water board park, I don't know, that might be a good portion of a full meeting, Pete.
Is this a decision item or just
no,
a presentation?
all he wants to do. Mike Mitchell, I worked with other people to come up with some concepts, and now I took it to the Parks Board because I wasn't going to be the lone wolf on this thing, and so they agreed this makes a lot of sense to try to do some passive recreation kind of planning up there in the future, and then advance the project over time.
My suggestion is
Yes,
that's
sir.
an item for the joint meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's
Let's do it.
That's that's
Yeah.
so that could be an item for the
Okay.
discussion.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep. Good. Do we see items? Okay.
I don't know, the discussion in terms of the meetings with both, the work session with Planning Commission, also a joint meeting with PRAC, I would think it's going to occupy a fair amount of time.
I think that's going to take a lot of time. They're both decision items. They're not just work session.
Right.
So be prepared for that, and ask me ahead of time if you have questions about any of the items we discussed tonight, code-wise, so I can send out the right material for your information. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, the meeting's closed.
Thanks.
Thank you.